awareness here.
We are.
Right?
We're raising awareness. We've known for a while it's probably the most important part of the game, besides, not being very bad at the game when you're playing it. So, it's a close race. A draft can even make up for that sometimes. It's about helping you understand popular comps that are being drafted on the pro level. It's about maybe things you can use in your own drafts and just understanding the meta and the draft phase so you can give yourself the best chance to win possible. What else do I have? I think that's it for now. I do have a couple of announcements toward the end of the show, but I'll save it for then. That way, it's easier to remember. So, Cavalier, what have you been up to, man?
Since last time I was on the show, I got recruited by Gale Force Esports.
I saw that.
To be their primary content creator for Heroes of the Storm. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's been huge for me.
Awesome.
There's some other stuff that's going to be going forward with that soon that I can't talk about yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I've moved over to doing a show-style format for my stream. So now I have a series of weekly shows that I'm working on. The first one is already up and running. It's called Going Alone. And it's all about solo laning and solo laning matchups. And actually, I went over one of the drafts we're going to go over tonight. I asked Bad Benny to send me the replay for it, specifically so I could go over the Sonya versus Leoric solo lane matchup. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that tonight in the draft phase.
Nice.
But there's an entire video on it if people want to check it out.
Yeah. Feel free to send me the link or link in the chat or whatever, or I can tweet it out later or put it in our chat.
It was on my stream yesterday. I haven't put the video on YouTube yet. It should be going up tomorrow. But
I'll make sure when I see that to press the button on it. That's awesome, man. We love. I've checked out the VODs of your Saturday show a couple times, and we love your game knowledge, and we love having you on our show. So yeah, awesome. And congrats on the Gale Force thing. That's great.
Yeah, it's been a really big deal for me. I've been casting Heroes of the Storm, writing guides for a year now, so it was a big step forward to have such a huge community presence. Because Gale Force, started in Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah.
Right? It was kind of from a Reddit post. Heroes of the Storm was their first team that they recruited when they started up as an esports organization. So they're like central to the community, and they're like, we want you. We love your content, and it's been really, really great for me.
It's great to have your hard work pay off. Absolutely. Like even that acknowledgement, So yeah, awesome. But tonight, ladies' night, it's a Braxis holdout discussion, and specifically a discussion of drafting something that's popular on Braxis quite often is shield emphasis, heroes like Zarya, Tassadar, things like that. So we are going to head right to Braxis holdout, and you picked a game between Fanatic and Team Expert, and I believe this was from the qualifiers. Is that correct? Or no,
this was from the
King of the Storm.
This was from the King of the Storm, which was a community-funded tournament that was going on in EU that was open to both pros and amateurs. So, of course, professional teams want to play for money. They signed up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually a really cool tournament. I believe the final prize pool was something like 5,000 euros. So it was a pretty decent prize pool. And it was actually hard to find some of the casts in English because there were so many different casters casting in so many different languages, but there weren't. Not every game got casted in English. So
oh wow!
For a lot of our North American people who are probably watching, you probably missed this tournament. I encourage you to see what you can find in terms of odds. Check it out. It was a really fun game, or fun set of games, I should say.
I would watch that. I didn't even know it. I was barely conscious that it was happening. I knew it was happening, but I didn't know when or where. So yeah.
Yeah.
The looks like the VODs are available on this Master League link, so if you go to masterleague.net and find it, it should be there. But yeah, so Braxis Holdout, since its release, has seen its meta kind of evolve quite a bit. The things that were emphasized when the map first came out are obviously not as emphasized as much. Some of the things are, but it has definitely changed a lot. So what's the current thinking on our map of the night here, Braxis, like as far as overall broad strokes?
It's kind of an interesting map overall. It really is, with some exceptions of the way certain Chinese teams do it. And we can actually talk about that a little bit going into the draft. But you need a really, really strong foreman, and you want a hero who can win the solo lane.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say win the solo lane, I mean either they win the siege war or they win the point. It's not necessarily about securing kills. It's not necessarily about, forcing the opponent out of lane. It's really, can you win the point 1v1, or can you out-siege the opponent such that you get significant damage
right
onto the buildings? And those are not necessarily the same questions, which is one of the things we're going to talk about as this draft moves forward. But it's a really difficult map to draft correctly for because of how powerful certain heroes are on it and how prioritized they are. But then you start getting into this question of, well, can we deal with this way? Can we deal with this way? And then you don't want to give away too much of your strategy too early on in the draft, or it puts you in a position where you can't really recover the draft because suddenly your 4-man's not strong and your solo lane's not strong. So it's one of the harder maps to draft for.
It is. It is a hard map to draft for, and it's a very hard map to play this proper quote unquote strategy of the 4-man and the 1-man and drafting it properly, especially when you're, just playing on Battle.net, like or Blizzard Net, I don't know. When you're just playing, because a lot of people don't understand the core concepts of this, and you want to try to kind of explain it, but it's kind of also maybe we should just not try to do that and just so it's hard when you're playing on your own to draft properly on this map. But the pro level, they've definitely figured out this is what we do on this map now, kind of thing, and it's kind of like this unspoken rule. Not to say that couldn't be broken by a team, but so far this is kind of just how it's played. Another thing I've found from this map that I greatly enjoy since its evolution is, to me, this is kind of the first map where this solo lane question has really come into the forefront, right? People who played old MOBAs, laning phase was a big thing, and there are other maps where you solo lane against each other, big maps where it's important, but I feel like Braxis is the one where it's really emphasized the most as far as the solo matchup.
The next most important map would be Dragonshire, because of the rotational distance, but on Dragonshire, since you're rotating between the mid and the bot lane, it's often easy to lose track of the enemy team, which means they can rotate top and get a gank potentially on the solo laner. On Braxis, if someone's missing from the 4-man, especially in competitive play, the 4-man's instantly aware of it. They're like, someone's missing, and then you back up. So
it's only one place he could be going.
Yeah, on Braxis it really is a 1v1 95% of the time. And so it matters more. Yeah.
I'm a fan of that.
But it's also been really interesting to see how that single lane has evolved and who's good in it and for what reason, right? I mean, that's one of the more interesting parts to me.
I mean, there's a reason I started a weekly show on solo laning.
Yeah.
It's really not stale.
Yeah, exactly.
No. I mean, did you know that TLV beats Dahaka in the solo lane?
I did not know that.
I did not know that either.
I spent an hour analyzing that. It's something that Laval, which is the university team, the Heroes of the Dorm team.
Yeah, Laval,
Their Vikings player, I think it's Electromad, runs Vikings versus Dahaka.
You know what? I saw one of those games. I thought it was just weird. I didn't realize it was a thing,
Yeah, it's a thing, and Vikings are actually surprisingly good solo laner against a good range of heroes. It's not something you get to talk about very often because there aren't that many good Vikings players, especially in North America.
Right.
But you can do it. Yeah. It works.
I mean, it makes sense, right? You got a little baby Misha to hold the point, move around, do some damage. I get it. Olaf and all that. Interesting. I like playing Lost Vikings. Maybe I'll try it. I'll make sure Ryan's in the game so we lose, though.
Oh boy.
Yeah. That way he can get mad at me for trying it. But on this map, Braxis holdout Fanatic versus Team Expert. Looks like the first pick and first ban went to Fanatic. And the first thing they do ban out is Tassadar. Is this just everyone hates Tassadar right now still happening, or is it specific?
Everyone in the pro scene doesn't like Tassadar.
Yeah.
He denies kills. Since his change, the last patch where the shield only lasts for 5 seconds, there's a 3-second window where you can play around shields and blow someone up. But you have to draft a blow-up comp for that to work, and generally speaking, the shield target will just be like, well, I have a 3-second window where I know I'm going to be vulnerable, I'm just going to back up.
Right.
So it's really, really difficult to deal with. And Braxis is all about staying there. You don't want to leave the 4-man at any point if you can possibly help it, unless there's this really good reason to do so. So a good Tassadar shield trades for 2 or 3 cooldowns from the enemy team in exchange for just his cooldown on his Q.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're trading cooldowns inefficiently like that, you're gonna have to leave the lane before the enemy team does. So that applies to both of the shielders. Anytime you have that mild efficiency in terms of trading cooldowns, that's gonna add up over the course of the 3, 4, 5 minutes you might have to be fighting in lane.
Right. Now, does this ban kind of, is the shield comp attempt now, that's it, it's out the window? Like, that's not happening?
Well, I mean, there's also Zarya.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a really weird Braxis draft.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you.
Nice.
Because Zarya is not going to be first picked, first banned, or even banned in the second round of rotation. This is going to be a really weird draft.
Okay. So
I would almost call it experimental.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's dig into it then. So, it is Falstad's the next ban, right? That's the order that goes in on the site, or is it Varian?
Yeah, Falstad's the next ban.
Falstad. Okay. I was gonna say that is weird. But so Team Expert here does ban the Falstad. Now, usually, like you said, you'll see Zarya get banned here. Maybe Medic. Other really strong solo lane heroes get banned here, or just really powerful heroes in general. But Falstad's the choice here, and what's your analysis of that choice?
It's partially because of the global. Whenever you're suddenly winning the 4-man, you can fly Falstad up to the top and suddenly be winning the solo lane as well. Mm-hmm. Also, Falstad's a reasonable way to deal with Dahaka. He's a reasonable way to deal with Sonya in the solo lane. Mm-hmm. Even though he's not a traditional solo laner, his mobility allows him to stay away from these melee heroes. And in Sonya's case, he's just about to spear. Dahaka literally cannot gap close the Falstad, right? So Falstad can poke Dahaka forever. Can actually kill the Dahaka or force the Dahaka off the point for more than like 10% of the time until 7 when he gets boomerang.
Right.
But again, on this map, you're going to be in the lane until 7, right? You're going to be doing that 1v1 matchup. So it's also a comfort denial. Quacknix is known for his Falstad. So by removing it from consideration, you remove the possibility of Fanatic picking up one of their favorite comfort picks.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so moving on to the first pick from Fnatic, and it is Vala.
Which is unusual.
Yes, definitely. There's no Tassadar available. Usually you see that classic combo taken in conjunction. That being said, she's still obviously a very powerful hero, but this kind of says to me, well, they're hiding something, or they got something up their sleeve with the first pick Vala, because you usually want it with the Tassadar, but they banned Tassadar. So
yeah, I mean, there's 2 heroes that do enough damage to sort of be the solo damage dealer on a comp, and they're good all game long. They're like Lunara, technically in the very, very late game, like level 22 plus, could be a solo damage dealer pretty effectively, but that's not Braxis holdout, right? That's a long time away. They're Val and Gul'dan. Those are the 2.
Right.
So if you wanted to focus on having one of the top tier damage dealers in your formation, it makes sense to pick up the Vala or the Gul'dan early on. I'm a little bit surprised that they picked up the Vala because of the lack of the Tassadar, right? You don't have that shielding potential anymore. And without the shielding potential, it's just a lot more difficult to the Vala to play really aggressively and really consistently do that damage. So I would have expected the Gul'dan here or the Zarya, right? Either get the shielder.
Right.
But I think what they were trying to do was pick up the Vala, and then who does Team Expert take when they inevitably draft Zarya, which they don't even do. Get spoiler. So that was the thinking. And their next 2 picks make it even more interesting in a lot of ways.
And those picks are, it would appear to be Zul'jin and Johanna.
Right.
Yeah, so Team Expert picks up Zul'jin and Johanna. This is the only map.
Choices.
Yeah, this is the only map I've really seen Zul'jin played in competitive.
Right. And
it has 100% to do with the fact that his level 1 quest is so important to him, and it's uncapped. So if you're constantly in a 4v4 skirmish, and you can just step up and keep auto attacking people over and over and over again, we've seen this quest get finished before like the 2-minute mark professional. Right, which is basically as soon as it can get finished.
That's awesome.
Because you're in a 4-man stack, so you're protected pretty much as you can, unless you're in a huge in a 5-man stack. And then obviously another reason Tassadar would be very, very good here is it makes him even safer to do his U1 axe. So
yeah,
okay, it's a very the map has got such a dynamic meta and draft style. I think it's completely unique, and I love that you see heroes like Zul'jin. Not only see Zul'jin like gimmickly, but like he's played here. I feel like the whole ideology of Heroes of the Storm was like, yeah, some heroes are good some places, some talents are good some places, some aren't. And this is a perfect example of that working. So, yeah, very cool. But the Johanna, you don't see much Johanna anymore. Do you have any thoughts on the Johanna pick there?
The Johanna does 3 really important things, actually. She offers a blind, which is really important against the Vala. She has that range blind, so it allows Zul'jin to move up and not get traded into as effectively. Generally speaking, in your one of the reasons for a long time Raynor was the best range assassin was because he had a longer auto attack range, and so he would actually start attacking first when someone like a Vala walk up to him, and that was enough for him to win the trade because he had the knockback as well. So he would knock back. He attack first, knock back, and then attack first again. And at that point, the other range assassin just had to back up. By blinding Vala while Zul'jin walks up to her, you get sort of the same dynamic going on where Zul'jin gets to attack first, and once his quest is finished, it applies even more so because he gets that range increase.
Right.
Plus, that blind offers quite a bit of value in a 4-man in a small lane, right?
Yeah.
You're probably hitting more than one.
It's going to mitigate quite a bit of damage. The second thing is this opens up Lucio or Ariel as potential pickups because Johanna's sort of the tank that doesn't need cleanse,
right?
Because of Iron Skin, which is a really big consideration. Right. You got to remember this is a EU. Occasionally, Chromy will get picked up on this map, so having cleanse or having someone who doesn't need cleanse either way is really, really important because of loop. So and having wave clear in the tank slot, you always need a certain amount of wave clear to make sure that you can push in the lane when you have an advantage, or so you don't get chunked by the minion trading. Because if one team clears faster, then you're in a situation where you're clearing the wave, but you're taking damage from the minions as well. And again, it's small amounts of damage add up over the 3 to 4 or 5 minutes you can be fighting a lane on Braxis Holdout. It really is all about optimizing the long game.
Right. Now, my question with this Zul'jin first pick, though, right, it does lead back to the Zarya. It's like they've picked Vala. They're not probably going to get Vala and Zul'jin. You could have got Zarya here or anyone not in that role. Why do you think the Zul'jin first pick happened despite the Vala already being picked?
I mean, your second pick, so you don't get to pick another hero until after the next round of bans has gone through.
That's true.
If you don't pick up your auto attacker here, the only auto attacker left that's considered viable in the competitive meta right now on this map is Hammer.
Hammer, yeah.
And that's pretty much only in the Korean scene. So, I mean, it's you pick Zul'jin here, you risk not getting an auto attacker at all, and you have to go all ability based.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Is Jo so popular that she deserves a second pick here, though? It seems like she should have picked her up at the end and been fine.
I think the Team Expert and Fnatic have been playing against each other a lot, and it's reflected in their drafting. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this draft, because it was so interesting. This is not a draft we would see between two teams who were drafting standard on Braxis who didn't know each other very well. But these teams obviously know each other very well based on the way they're drafting this out.
Okay.
That makes sense.
That does answer that for then. So second and third pick from Fnatic is double support here, which doesn't have the best history. Oh, I hate typing Lucio in this site because you have to put the silly U. Okay. Lucio and Ariel gets picked up for Fnatic.
So this is such a match made in heaven because you have the mobility from Lucio, which is one of Ariel's major weaknesses, which is he has no mobility of any kind. Lucio does very well so sustained healing over time. Ariel has big heals that sort of have gaps between them that you need sustained healing to fix that issue, and she does that. Both kind of have a save mechanic, but neither one has cleanse, so this gives you essentially a way to stagger your cooldowns to make big saves potentially. It's such an interesting idea, but I really question why not Malf. We've seen Malf Ariel once at the Gold Club World Championship, and it did extremely well in a similar situation where Tassadar was banned out. Zarya wasn't really considered part of the meta yet. And so why not pick up a support that has cleanse in addition to giving Ariel this massive, massive battery, right? And so it's interesting though, but they're really trying to play a mobile game. And we've seen Fnatic do this before. The one game they took off Tempest, or excuse me, L5 at BlizzCon. Ballistics at the time.
Ballistics.
Team. They actually drafted a hypermobile comp, right? They drafted Tyrael, Falstad, Tracer, Brightwing, Tassadar.
Right.
And all of those heroes have a lot of mobility. Tyrael can give other people on his team mobility. So this is something that they've done, and I think they're experimenting with it. They're like, okay, well, Lucio has some weaknesses at the competitive level as a support, but if we pair him with another support, can we make up for those weaknesses, still have enough damage, and just be a really hyper-mobile composition all the time? And mobility is pretty underestimated, honestly, in Heroes of the Storm by the majority of the player base. People don't understand that moving a little bit faster than the enemy, especially with good positioning, will mean you're always in a better position than they are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And when you combine it with a hero like Arthas, which is what I've been dealing with, a lot of Lucio Arthas, and it's like, man, this is really tough to deal with. Speed is king in a team fight situation, or just in a brawl situation. Is Vala a powerful enough engine for Ariel?
Oh yeah. There's really only 5 heroes at the competitive level that are good enough batteries for an Ariel. They are Vala, Gul'dan in all game long. Those work.
Right.
Shogal, who
Makes
isn't
sense.
ideal until like 8 or 9 or 10, somewhere around that level, because his damage scales faster than other people's, at least on some of his abilities. Lunara, who her trait scales at 5%. So again, it's a situation where in the very, very late game, she's arguably the best battery, but in the early game, it's not as good. She also gets Splintered Spear at 7, which means her trait spreads to basically every single hero in range, which helps a lot in terms of just raw bullshit damage numbers. And then there's Nazeebo, particularly post 16 and post 20, and that's it. Those are the 5. There's really no other heroes that have consistent enough damage across the entire duration of a team fight to be a proper battery for Ariel. Everyone else has like an issue. So either their damage comes at the back end, like a Li Ming, or it's too bursty, like a Chromy, and doesn't always hit. Like,
not reliable damage. Yeah. So as a rule of thumb, you would say draft Ariel. If you want to play Ariel or draft Ariel, draft her with those 5 heroes. Those being Vala, Gul'dan, Lunara, Cho'Gall, and Nazeebo.
Yeah, one of those.
Okay, got it. That is good. That's good to know. So, going to the ban phase for Fnatic, Team Expert will have the first ban here. They banned Varian, which Varian is in a weird place, I guess, lately, where I feel like a lot of people aren't sure how good he is anymore. Some teams still draft him and ban him, some teams just completely ignore him, so.
Varian's an interesting place. I think that the ban here is mostly about lockdown. They don't want to risk the Zul'jin getting taunted as he's about to Taz Dingo, which is one of the ways taunts are a really good interrupt for them on that, because it is still a long piece of lockdown in and of itself.
Right.
So.
Okay. I get that.
Also, Shieldbreaker is really good against Johanna. Johanna, a lot of her survivability is tied into Iron Skin. It's a shield.
That's a good point. And when you manage to actually pull off the Shieldbreaker, it's not super hard to hit, but it's just kind of, it's hard to take Shieldbreaker in my opinion, because it only hits one guy, right? And that's not how a shield comp works. Usually a shield comp is there's 3 shielded people here I need to deal with, but it does pretty much melt Johanna's shield. So that's a good point there with the Varian ban. Fnatic does ban out the Morales. We talked about this, I think, last time you were on. Morales, essentially, early game, you're going to win your 4-man because you just have so much raw healing output in your 4-man.
Especially paired with the Zul'jin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can literally... We could literally have all 4 people from Fnatic DPSing down the Zul'jin with Morales' healing beam on him, and he would live. He would just sit there and eat it, and they wouldn't be able to kill him. Especially with double support, their damage output is nowhere near high enough to secure a pick against the Morales comp. They can't do it. They can sit there eating tower shots, and it just wouldn't work.
So if that's such an advantage, would it have behooved Team Expert to maybe go Zul'jin Morales rather than risk not having the Johanna?
It would have really changed the direction of the draft. And again, I have to wonder, what have they been doing in scrims against each other that this was the result in a game with money on the line, right?
Yeah.
There was actually, and Team Expert was up a game here, so they are currently 2-1.
Okay.
This was the final, so I believe this was a best of 7. So they win 2 more games in a row. They win. So this is the penultimate game for them potentially. And Fnatic was down 2 games, so obviously they wanted to take this very seriously, which again makes me wonder what they've been up to.
Yeah, because
Right,
it's already a weird draft. Like it's not
Very
like
weird.
it's not like bonkers off the wall heroes you would never expect, but it's pretty wonky for sure so far. Yeah.
It's definitely, that's the right word for it. It is wonky.
Yeah.
Finally pulled one out, Dan.
Finally got a good word. Good. So Team Expert now with the next 2 picks, their 3rd and 4th picks. Again, interesting choices here. Well, I guess the Malf isn't interesting, but Sonya Malfurion gets picked up for Team Expert.
Yeah, Malf is the best of the rest. With the supports that have currently been taken or banned, he's the only viable sustained support for Team Expert's comp at this point in the game. It does give them Cleanse, which is nice. It gives them Twilight Dream. It gives them Root, although they don't have a great follow-up. Like, except for Blessed Shield, they're not going to have Root as a follow-up to anything really big unless Bad Benny can get a really big condemn off. Right. But has Cleanse, is a sustain healer, has the advantage of Mana Sustain, which is obviously unique to Malfurion.
Right.
Among the supports.
So obviously Sonya's getting picked up here for the solo lane. Where does she rank in the solo lane power rankings in your estimation?
Sonya will win every single solo lane where she's up against another melee hero.
Okay. So
that's currently where she won't necessarily win it 100% in the sense of getting straight structure damage, but she'll tie the lane at a minimum.
She'll do her job. Because she's not going to lose.
The amount of sustain she gets off a minion wave is close to like a third of her health bar per E on a minion wave. That's not counting the fact that she's going to get a glow, right? It's not counting the fact that she doesn't use mana, so she doesn't have to back as long as her health stays high, and she can usually get 2 full whirlwinds off per wave.
Right.
And that's not even counting if it's hitting the enemy hero.
Right.
In the lane, so she's getting that additional healing, which puts her in a situation where if there's a minion wave there, you can't effectively kill her or even chip her. She's gonna always be at full health.
Do you feel there? Oh, sorry.
Ridiculous.
Do you feel there are any viable solo lane ranged heroes?
Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting dynamic because if you're talking about the solo lane, if you're up against a melee hero who lacks a gap closer, then heroes who are not traditionally solo laners that are ranged suddenly become really viable counters. Falstad is really good. Lunara will actually put a lot of damage onto Sonya and will be able to keep the wave off the towers. Gul'dan can obviously do it if you wanted to do something like that. Zul'jin has a little bit of trouble with it because he lacks mobility. And the nice thing about like the Falstad and the Lunara is they have that increased movement speed, which makes it a lot easier for them to dance and make sure they can juke the spear. If Sonya hits the spear, then you're going to take so much damage that you're usually forced to back or tap as a ranged. Like Valo will win this lane if you're confident, especially if you have Hot Pursuit. Right. As long as you don't get by the spear, it's a lane Vala can actually win, and Vala is not a solo laner, so it's a different dynamic when you're talking about these heroes who are melee and lack a gap closer.
Well, maybe she'll become one if Sonya stays popular. We'll see. Anything's possible. So Sonya Malf. So that's their choice for the solo lane, and Fnatic's going to finish out their team with Muradin and Leo. So they're going to go with Leo in the solo lane against the Sonya.
Sorry, just backing up 1 second.
Oh, sure.
Was there another viable healer for them to pick up here? Where do you have Lucio and Ariel gone? Morales is banned out.
Viable, yes. Optimal, no. The only other option would have been Brightwing for the global potential, but it's not worth it.
Okay.
Like, it's possible, but not worth it.
Lose the roots, she does have cleanse, but you lose fat heals.
And the mana sustain, right?
Mana.
Yeah, you lose the mana sustain. It's just you lose Twilight Dream, which is huge. It's just not as good.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, their warriors. They went with the new, the old new hotness. Guy who's always been around, but who's kind of stepped it up since the ECC change. Muradin and Leo for the solo lane. So yeah, tell us about those.
The Muradin's fairly obvious. They needed some sort of stun tank. And with the recent changes to EDC, he's just not as good. So
Yeah, it's sad. Sad but true.
Murden has really good mobility, especially with on the point. If you ever get low, you can hop over the wall and be completely safe.
Right.
Leoric has a really interesting dynamic with Sonya in the Soul, and that we can talk about. But he's also just really good against Johanna because of Drain and her relative lack of mobility. And if you look at Team Expert's comp, there's 4 people who are not happy getting entombed because they don't have a way to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's true.
So Fanatic
talk to me
drafted
go ahead.
Fanatic drafted very much for the late game,
mm-hmm.
or even the mid game. Like they want to have team fights post 10 and just play even until then, and their comp would work if they got to 10. But if you go watch this game, spoiler, they don't get to 10 even. They're actually quite far behind at that point.
Wow. Okay. That's unfortunate. Well, we can talk about the Leoric thing once we've round out this draft for Team Expert. And there she is. Everyone's like, Zarya's in this game. Like, you're aware of that, right? Like, triple tank Zarya, it's definitely a thing people like to do. And there she is finally. So, yeah.
Yeah, Zarya is the best hero on Braxis by an enormous margin. Shields are good on Braxis. We already talked about how good shields on Braxis are in general. A good shield, you're trading cooldowns very effectively. But between the two of them, Zarya's early game is potentially the most insane of any hero, with maybe only Sylvanas and a really hard snowball being worse. So the fact that Zarya is the best hero on this map, and this is Zarya's best map, and she was left to last pick is mind-boggling. Yeah. Absolutely insane. I would rather not have a real tank in my format and have Zarya than anything else on Braxis. Like, that is how nuts Zarya is on this map. So, and I don't... This is such a weird draft.
And so the first thing that jumps out at me looking at this draft is, so they have triple warrior, they have a good healer with roots and cleanse. All their damage is riding on Vala, which Captain Logan brought up in the chat there. I would say the same thing. I'd be like, is that really enough to do anything? Is it? Does it? Okay, so tell us about the first the 4-man and then the solo matchup.
We have seen time and time again Vala, usually with a Tassadar, sometimes just with double support though, be enough damage for a team. They'll run double tank, double support, Vala, and it's enough. Vala's damage numbers are obscene. They're just so incredibly high. When she's a full 10 stacks of hatred, if she's constantly auto-attacking, she has burst from punishment on her multi-shot at 4. She just, she has mobility from Vault. She has the 20% movement spin screed from Hot Pursuit. She has the throughput damage if she wants with Strafe, or she has a lot of, control and self-peel with Rain of Vengeance. She does enough damage for an entire team. We've seen professional games. And people, you guys go. I encourage everyone to go to Master League, look for a Vala Tassadar comp, and look at the one that has a replay available, because on Master League, if a replay is available to download, that means the site has parsed it and the score screen is actually there. We have seen games where Vala had literally triple the damage of anyone else on either team in professional play. That is where Vala is in terms of her damage output. It's enough for an entire team.
Gotcha. Okay. So, well, and the thing that I guess now that you break it down like that, it makes sense to me. That damage is there, but she has to be able to stand there and pour it out, right? So that's where Muradin himself is just like, he's such a nuisance, and with the stuns and the thunderclap and body blocking, and then you have the Ariel whipping back, and then you have the mobility from Lucio. She can really, I guess I see it now, is my point. She has all the opportunity in the world to pour her damage out with this comp. Yeah. So
yeah, but it would have worked. It would have worked post 10, but I don't think it works in the 4-man.
Okay.
So, and if you're not winning the 4-man on Braxis, you better be winning that solo lane, and it's it's hard to win the solo lane against Zarya.
And she has to stay alive. I realize that there's stuns and there's two healers, but Team Expert has a lot of displacement. They have a lot of ability to close gaps, and if Zul'jin can stand there and dish it out, she could be in trouble.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I didn't see this game. How did the 4-man play out?
They lost.
Yeah. Okay.
They actually lost the 4-man so hard that occasionally ADRD would actually rotate up to the top lane and help push it out.
Just to help. Okay.
Which is actually something we've seen more and more in professional play. We're starting to see teams do like 2-3 splits at the beginning of the game instead of 1-4. And then they'll try and use that 2-3 split to get a slight advantage in the solo lane before rotating one person down to the 4-man, because you can recover ground in the 4-man, but if you can't recover ground in a 1v1 usually, right? And the Chinese teams, I think, are the ones that actually started doing this, but everyone else picked up on it really, really quickly, and now we're starting to see some really interesting different laning arrangements. So, and more clever rotations from teams. It's really cool.
Was it just kind of mistakes in the gameplay that caused them to lose the 4-man, or do you think it was something about the draft? Was it just Zarya's early game power? Just, hi, I have shields and I pour out more damage than anybody right now. Like, was it?
It was in these tower shots.
Yeah. It was Zarya's early game. Yeah. Zarya's early game is incredibly nuts. Fnatic drafted a comp that is good post 10. On a map where you can have lost the game by level 10.
Right. Okay. So talk to us about this Leoric Sonya matchup top then.
So the long and short takeaway is Sonya will win the lane. She actually out-sustains the amount of health that Leoric gets back from Drain Hope. If Leoric ever misses a Drain Hope, then he has to back up and suddenly he's lost a lot of ground in the lane. But Sonya only sustains Drain Hope with a minion wave. Without a minion wave, she doesn't. So Leoric will always win the point if they're even in levels. But Sonya will win the lane. And so the question is, how much does that point matter? If you're losing your 4-man, and therefore you're losing the point, then it doesn't matter if Sonya's pushing in and getting free towers. Because you're going to make up the difference by pushing in with the Zerg wave that your team's inevitably going to win. And actually, the only time Wubby lost the point was when he missed a Drain Hope.
Okay.
All right.
Interesting. So
how much impact does a differential in the level lead have, though? Can Sonya out-sustain even with Drain Hope if she's 3 levels up, or is it kind of it doesn't matter?
I mean, 3 levels would be his full talent tier, in which case, it would be massive, because she would also have that would take a long time to happen. And as soon as she got Wrath, she actually did, manage to take away the point. So she had 10 and Leoric didn't.
Okay. Right.
I would say 2 levels of scaling puts the matchup slightly more favorably in Sonya's favor in terms of winning the point. So if it was like 6 to 8 and she had ferocious healing, that would be like a really big advantage. But on average, even levels, Sonya can't win the point, but she can win the lane.
But in this game specifically, though, that was okay, because the 4-man was doing so well that it was just, as long as they were holding a point, they were gaining an advantage, and eventually the experience snowballed. Is that kind of how it went down?
Yeah, what ended up happening was Fnatic actually pushed all the way to core and into the game on the second Zerg wave. And the final levels, I think, were 14 or 15 to 10 or 11.
It's a huge level differential.
Well, they had both keeps down, so they killed literally every structure.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I kind of want to check that game out. Maybe I will later today.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That was a good one. So that was kind of an example of a very funky Braxis holdout draft. It
was, but it demonstrates a really important point, which is that on average, if one team has a shield, that team should always win.
Okay, right.
On Braxis. And now we're gonna move on to the exception.
Okay, so there's an exception. So now Fnatic did have a shield, but they had to wait till 10 for it. So apparently that didn't work out.
Sound barrier is not quite the same thing.
Yeah. Sound barrier is not the same thing. Okay, so let me change the team names here. So this is from HGC China group stage. This game went down about 10 days ago. And it's Team SE, CE, who I've never seen play, and X Team, who I have seen play. So let me just change these real quick.
Yeah, CE is a challenge everything. They're a mixture of people who were new to the scene and some other players from other teams that have been disbanded. So it's a really good mix. I think Challenge Everything may be the only team in China that can actually challenge E-Star for the top spot right now.
Right.
So they're a really good team.
That's cool. It's also in their name, so they probably can, challenge everything. So that makes sense. I like that attitude, I like the attitude. The team names, you got to have a fierce team name. I appreciate that. So, Fnatic Team Expert, no. CE versus X Team. Okay, so first pick on this map is going to go to Challenge Everything. and first bans, obviously, and they choose to ban out Gul'dan.
Which is a very reasonable ban.
Yes, definitely.
It leaves you open to getting a shielder, potentially the only shielder if the enemy team doesn't ban one. And we talked about it. I mean, Gul'dan and Vala are sort of the two top tier damage dealers on this map in particular. So.
Okay, yeah.
Interesting.
Pretty. I mean, I think the Gul'dan ban there is pretty well understood. Yeah, would be understood by anyone. So no need to linger on that one. So the first ban on the side of X team is that solo lane Sonya.
Yeah, and Sonya's always been more popular in both Korea and China, so I'm not surprised by that. And she really is she's oppressive right now. There's no other way to put it. If there's a melee hero you want to run in the solo lane, it's like, too bad. We're going to draft Sonya.
Right.
So by taking her off the table, it's interesting because if you take her off the table this early, and you open up the enemy team to picking up a different melee hero as well, and it kind of becomes a little bit rougher overall. So
gotcha.
I don't know about drafting her early like that, but again, isolating the solo lane is something you can do with your bans if that's an option you want to go for.
Right, and we do see teams do that fairly often. Okay, so Sonya's ban out. So Vala and Sonya, the Diablo 3 ladies, are powerful on Braxis, turns out. Well, powerful everywhere, but especially on Braxis. So first pick...
First pitch, yeah.
Was actually the Morales. So we see a kind of a more traditional, expected draft coming out here from Challenge Everything so far with the Morales first pick. Just like we said earlier, very strong healer for that 4-man.
Yeah, that's such a strong pick. Morales, again, arguably the strongest healer on this map in particular, because she is the strongest early game, and her healing throughput, if you calculate it by heals per second, is basically double that of every other healer.
Right. Would you still take Zarya?
I would still take Zarya.
Yeah. Is she a worthy first pick though? I mean,
I would take Zarya first pick on Braxis holdout 100% of the time.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm a Morales. Like, is she typically a first pick?
She is, when we see her on Braxis, she's typically picked by the second team, and the on rails version of drafting on Braxis holdout is both shielders get banned, and then if Morales doesn't get picked up, Morales Gul'dan gets picked up by the second team.
Okay.
Right, or if a shielder's left open, then the shielder is always picked by the first team, then Morales Gul'dan is kind of the response. Like, that's the standard response, because it gives you 2 of the 3 strongest heroes for the map, whereas the other team only got 1 of the strongest heroes, but it's a shielder.
Right.
So it's interesting that this is a first pick Morales and not a shielder, right? So
yeah, it's definitely trying to throw X team off a little bit, I think, but also it is a justifiable first pick on this map just because of how crazy her sustain is. And we've started to see the competitive level bio shield actually picked up at level 4, which isn't a huge shield, but it is a shield, and it is difficult to punch through if you have a really on the ball carry who's dodging skill shots consistently.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we've just discussed the shields. Tassadar and Zarya are wide open, and you almost always see Tassadar banned out in pro play, but we do not, and they actually pick up the Tassadar and the Zarya. So that's scary, right? Like
that's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
We saw, I think it might have been L5. It was one of the Korean teams actually got this comp, and they ended up picking a Hammer for the last spot, and Hammer literally sieged outside the towers in the 4-man and just sat there eating shields and didn't die.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, they staggered out the shields, the entire enemy team was focusing her, and she was just like,
it's fine.
True
I have shields.
story, bro. Like,
I don't. They ended up killing the tower before anything could even happen, because they could not kill Hammer. It was ridiculous. Double shield is terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
Right. So, from your point of view, and probably a lot of people's, this looks like, oh man, X team really is winning this draft because they have these 2 heroes.
Oh, yeah.
So
I saw this and I was like, there's no way they should lose this game. If they lose, either they're going to mess up in the latter half of the draft. In fact, in my opinion, they do, or they're going to completely misplay. And there is enough of a gap. I talked about how Challenge Everything really is, in my opinion, probably the second best team in China, X team is not at that level, so there was a significant amount of outplay. But X team was just handed a gift, getting
Right.
both shielders and Braxis.
Absolutely.
Right. So Challenge Everything does pick up the Vala here, who we've talked about. And, I already forgot. Oh, right. Hero I like playing is Dahaka, yeah, in the solo lane. Though I do feel maybe through the changes through the meta and a couple of balance changes, Dahaka is not the prime solo warrior that he was at one point, but still pretty good. What do you think of Dahaka?
Dahaka's reasonable. He does, again, lack a gap closer, so any ranged hero can counter him, essentially, which puts him in a relatively awkward position. But the global is always really nice because it always means that you can come down to the 4-man if you need to. It always means that if the game does get to the mid to late game, you can always be pushing out a lane and then be next to your team because there are a significant number of bushes on this map.
That's true.
And even his Z is essentially a lane sustain. If you ever get low, you don't necessarily have to burn your tap. You can back and come back in. And that's really important because in a lot of cases what you can do, especially if you really need to win the point right now, is you can always pre-tap and then sit on the point for longer because you have the essence and then you have your tap rolling. So you don't have to use your tap for sustain because you have your Z. It's really difficult to beat Dahaka in lane. At best you can... Normally the best you can do is tie him. Yeah. And... he can sit on the point for a long time, even if you have enough damage to eventually force him off, but then he's back at full health and full mana, and you're not. So
now, and also I like the pick here because of the Sonya ban too, because I do think, from what you said, he's going to have a hard time winning the point against the Sonya once he uses his essence once, because he's going to have to leave to go get more essence to come back and hold the point. And Sonya will always have kind of a sustain option, even when on the obviously not as good as Leorix, but at least she can self-heal while battling over that beacon. So I like the Dahaka with the Sonya gone. I'd be a little worried if Sonya was available. Does that make sense? Yeah.
That's reasonable. Yeah. Absolutely reasonable.
Yeah. Okay. So Vala, Dahaka, and then we move into the bans.
I really want to talk about this next ban.
Okay. So the ban is the ETC from X Team. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. Well, tell me about this first, and I'll ask my questions.
It's an ETC ban. ETC, I think people didn't understand exactly where he was in terms of his effectiveness. A lot of people underestimated how important Rockstar was to his individual and team-centered damage output. But he's still, a stun tank. He still has a certain amount of sustain from his self-healing. And at the very, very high end, he's still, securing picks, which is really important. The slide into follow-up combo is still almost point and click, right? You don't miss it. He still has Mosh Pit, which is incredibly important in terms of playmaking. But he's worse. Even under optimal conditions, he's only 8% more survivable, and he lost 25% of his personal attack damage, essentially, and the damage he added to everyone else. So he lost more than he gained with this change.
Now, this game, when was he nerfed? Because this game was after he was nerfed? Because this game is from the 4th, so actually...
Yes, it was, right?
I don't know. Let's find out. Ryan.
It was after.
Ryan, my librarian, go.
I think it was right after, but we actually don't know because there's a lack of details coming out of HGC China.
Right.
Which patch HGC China was being said.
I bet it's old ETC. Because it's 10 days ago.
He was nerfed on the 4th, and this game was played on the 4th.
Yeah, so this
might have been old ETC, which makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, then I get it.
Even then, I still have two questions. Well, one, what are they afraid of, and for their comp specifically, right? Other than ETC was good all around, and then two, why wouldn't you ban Varian with Shieldbreaker when all you're banking on are shields?
There's a bias towards the early game on Braxis, and Varian's a hero that spikes at 10.
True.
Okay.
So not as big a deal. ETC is a really strong tank all game long. Even Murden tends to be better post 13 when he has healing static. So of the stun tanks, ETC is the strongest in the early game.
Okay.
Yeah. Plus, I think it'd probably be a worry about Mosh. Mosh and just the simple stun combos, because that's kind of the only thing.
Still post 10.
I mean, they have Grenade. They could have Rain of Vengeance to interrupt. I think they have enough Mosh interrupts. I really think they are just almost tunnel visualing tunnel visioning on the fact that he's the strongest early game tank, and they feel like they can dominate the early game.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably right. All right.
Which makes the next two picks so strange, and this is why this is why I picked these drafts, because the first one was just odd based on I think scrim results and the fact those two teams knew each other so well. Mm-hmm. But it gives people an idea who are watching the show that drafting is so difficult that even professional teams who spend literally hours playing the game every single day still struggle with it. One of the reasons that I think there's been a huge emphasis on draft, and we talked about this at the beginning of the show, how commentators are talking about it more and how teams are talking about it more, is because it's one of the areas where teams can actually improve a lot. They already scrim every day. They already practice their mechanics. They don't practice drafting.
Because it's boring.
Well, I mean, depending on your perspective, but a lot of teams don't practice drafting.
I don't think it's boring, but
so much of it's situational too. That where are you in the series? Who are you playing against? What just happened in the last game? Right.
It's very, very difficult to do, and so if teams practice drafting the same way they practice, playing their heroes and scrimming, they would improve a lot more. And if you improve a lot at drafting, suddenly your games get much easier.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Let's not say boring. I mean, a lot of people think it's boring, but let's say it's dry. Like practicing drafting is, to me, the equivalent, and I wish teams would do it. It's the equivalent of like running laps. When you're on a basketball team, it's like it's not fun. You don't want to do it. It's just kind of, I don't know. And I think a lot of teams avoid practicing drafting because they don't have a coach being like, you have to run. So I think teams, especially some NA teams, could be so good if they would practice drafting more. Honestly, I see them, and I'm no expert. I've just hosted this show a lot, and I see them screwing up. I see draft screw ups, and I'm like, but I'm me. How can you screw this up? So yeah, definitely need to improve the drafting on a lot of teams. So tell us about this Lunara Lucio.
So Zul'jin's been banned out, Gul'dan's been banned out, Vala's been banned out.
Oh, sorry, I skipped the ban.
Or Vala's been taken. Zul'jin was banned. Zul'jin was banned because this Lunara was going to get picked up. They wanted to force Lunara to pick up. There really aren't that many good auto attackers in the game. If you go and look, there really aren't that many good sustained damage dealers in the game, and the few that exist tend to be quest gated, or they tend to only work because of scaling, so they only work in the very, very late game. Mm-hmm. And with Gul'dan, Vala gone, who are the two really rock solid heroes in terms of damage all game long, with Zul'jin gone. Zul'jin's gated by his level 1 talent quest, but it's relatively easy to finish on Braxis, more so than any other map. Lunara is being kind of used as a Vala substitute. Right. In the competitive meta. If we wanted Vala here, but we can't get her, so we'll take Lunara. She still has the movement speed, but her damage doesn't matter really in the early game, and in particular, her damage doesn't matter versus Medic, because Medic's healing output is so high that Lunara's not going to be able to actually damage anyone enough to get them low enough to potentially kill them until 14, 15, 16. Literally that's the level.
Right.
And again, Braxis Holdout's not a late game map. That's not how that works. So picking up the Lunara here, I think she'll spread poison and it'll be hard for Medic to keep up with it. Mm-hmm. But that's true. Earliest that's true is 7. And because of the way the trade scales, it's not really true until the very, very late game.
Right.
And you don't get to that late game consistently. Certainly not ahead on Braxis unless you have the superior damage. Mm-hmm. So that's just a weird pickup. There's really no way of putting it.
Now, what would you do in that slot? Would you pick up a considered suboptimal auto attacker like Raynor, or would you just do a mage, or what would you do?
That's a tough question, right? Because I personally would want to pick up a hero that, how do I put this? Was good in the early game to complement the fact that I already have a Zarya. I want to snowball as hard as I possibly can based on the fact that I already have a relatively early game comp.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right? I would have preferred even a Sylvanas. Because Sylvanas still has spread poison damage, right? It's not effective kill damage, but relative to Lunara's damage, it's more damage in the early game than Lunara's is, and it's still spread because of Shadow Dagger. And there's that potential for the snowball. If you do win the point, suddenly you can push in really hard and just be really far ahead.
Right.
I would have preferred Alarak for combo potential. Alarak can play very, very aggressively. One thing their comp is lacking is a gap closer.
Yeah.
Right now, they have no like engage potential, so Alarak forces people in to him. That would have been good.
Plus shields.
Hammer would have been good. We talked about Hammer already on this map. You can literally just sit there and eat damage, right? One of the reasons that Hammer doesn't get picked up necessarily against Chinese teams is because Stitches will often get picked as a response.
Yeah. Or Chromy.
But yeah, all of those heroes or any of those heroes would have been better pickups, considering that I really just want to capitalize on the advantage that my draft has. And the advantage my draft has is I'm really, really strong in the early game.
Right. So Lunara, you would say then, is a hero better suited to a map like Tube and the Spider Queen, with a draft that emphasizes late game potential.
Or Dragonshire.
Or like Dragonshire.
Dragonshire and Tomb are maps where if you play safe, you can pretty much always get to 20. Right. Any map where Nazebo is going to be good, Lunara is going to be good.
Okay, gotcha. Because of the trait scaling. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the Lucio, they picked Lucio as their main healer. They're kind of the secondary support. Do you think that was a smart choice here?
I like the movement speed on Zarya. Zarya's major weakness is she lacks a disengage.
Right.
So I like that.
It's a really fast Lunara too.
They don't have a cleanse now, which puts them in a situation where they can die to all sorts of shenanigans. Cleanse is really important in competitive.
Right.
So Lucio's fine for sustain. The movement speed is really good for Zarya. I'm concerned that other than ETC, their bans didn't really focus on denying things that they would need cleanse to deal with.
Okay. Speaking of cleanse and it being really important, and I asked if we could talk about this, so I'm not going to get in trouble. I got to play some of the Uther rework at the media summit, and he has like a super cleanse. He has like it's cleanse, but every auto attack reduces its cooldown by like 5 seconds. Now, this is an older build. I don't know if it's still going to be that way, but that's the way it was there. And he had another talent at 7 that I think was like better than cleanse, but my brain is not getting it now. But it was like everyone he W's would get like an immunity or something, like a cleanse. But yeah, but that was an older build. Just an interesting point that maybe we'll see Uther come back with that rework. So.
They talked about that in one of the recent Q&As, how all of his talents at 7 were essentially different versions of dealing with CC.
Yeah, it was really cool.
So I'm from everything people have told me, the Uther rework is busted.
It is.
And he's just going to be a brokenly strong hero. I'm waiting till it actually goes on live.
Well, they did
adjust it down a little bit, but
they did tell us when we were playing it that it was like a week-old build, and they changed him since then. So we'll see. But yeah, at that thing, it was just like, oh my god, Uther, dude, like.
It'll be great to have him have his own niche again, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And he had his talents. Their talent ideas for the Uther rework were very, very interesting on most levels. So, anyway, sidetracked there. Sorry. Challenge everything. Okay, so we got the Lunara, Lucio. They round out their team with Varian and Chromy.
I love the Chromy pick.
Yeah, the Chromy pick is brilliant. One of the ways you beat shields is, again, you have that narrow window where you can just burst someone out. Shield's already on cooldown. But particularly with Chromy, you can't always see the damage coming. So she'll
so good.
Yeah, she'll be casting on you. You won't even know it. She'll hit you and you'll be dead. And if you can't anticipate the damage coming, the value of shields goes way down, because one of the reasons that shields are so busted at the competitive level is players know when damage is going to happen. They're like, oh, I see them doing this position, this guy's moving forward, that stun hit, I know they're going to do the follow-up, because you can anticipate the damage and get the maximum value out of every single one of your shields.
Right.
You can't anticipate Chromy's damage in a lot of cases, especially when she's doing like her poke, if she goes for some sort of poke build, especially the double Q talents at 1 and 2. For normal heroes, that's 1 and 4, and it's just hard to predict. And you really good against shields.
Right. Yeah, and it also puts the burden of execution on the shielders, right? Like Zarya, you're like, oh, I pressed W because I saw that sandblast coming, and now I have a bunch of energy, haha. But you only kind of have to miss that once, and then you're like at a big disadvantage, right? Because you just got comboed and like you have no health anymore. So the Tassadar and the Zarya have to constantly be vigilant, like looking for Chromy, looking for the angles, ready for their shields. Whereas Chromy just has to like face roll her buttons, definitely.
At least Tassadar has Oracle, so hopefully that's true. Provides some vision. But
It's on a longer cooldown. But yeah,
It is a long
I mean,
cooldown.
Sandblast is on a really short cooldown.
Yeah.
It is.
Varian gives them Shield Breaker at 13. Varian gives them Taunt, which is good enough for Chromy to land her combo, and they don't have Cleanse. They just don't have it. So Loop is going to consistently secure kills as well.
Right. So in your estimation, this draft is going after a really strong start. This draft is heading south for X team.
Oh yeah, they did not pick up every tool they needed to deal with everything that Challenge Everything could have picked up.
Well, they do finish their team with a very weird choice in my estimation.
Very weird.
They go for the Illidan, and who I don't see on Braxis ever.
Yeah. So what's this about besides it's some sort of gap close?
Shield. I mean, just go with Tash shields. I mean.
Yeah, but
it is a good shield target. And again, this is an example of teams being like, oh, well, we need someone to put the shields on. We need someone to carry to justify the Tassadar.
Right.
And Illidan, even at a really high end when he's played really well, doesn't do that much damage. He's really is a single target sort of lockdown style of hero. This does give some threat to the medic. And if you look at their comp, they might have realized this belatedly almost. I almost think they did. They don't have enough damage to threaten the medic. The three ways you beat medic are run her out of mana by doing so much damage to everyone. Can't really do that until the very late game when your main damage source is Lunara, which doesn't work.
Right.
Get on top of her personally and just kill her, right? Or isolate her from her team so that she can't heal them, like force her out.
Right, and
they can't do any of those with the 4 picks that they have.
Right.
And with
only leaping strike maybe a little, but that's post 10.
Yeah. So like, what's the one thing they can potentially do? Well, they can potentially dive her with Illidan, who is going to be on top of her. They do have limited peel for her. Varian, drag doesn't really work against an Illidan unless the Illidan makes a mistake.
Right.
And Varian doesn't have stun anymore, so. I think that
was their logic. Yeah.
But her range is so good though.
It absolutely is.
Should be caught, right?
It doesn't. It's one of those things I really do think where if you're thinking about it in the context of a bigger map, maybe it even makes sense. But in the context of Braxis Holdout, where there's no rotations and everyone's usually visible, you're not gonna get on top of a medic who has good positioning. You can't. She has scouting drone. Like if there's usually only one path of approach that's not 100% safe for her, and she has to keep an eye on it. But she has scouting drone, and she can't do it.
And probably Chromy vision too. She probably took that spot. Yeah. So
I mean, it's.
So is that why you feel the Illidan's? I guess elaborate on why the Illidan's so not working here for you.
I mean, they needed a frontliner. They needed a frontliner, so Illidan makes sense in that context. They essentially don't have a tank, which means that they do get into these late game team fights. But if your plan was to get into the late game team fights and win that way, and with obviously it is if you pick Lunara because Lunara is a late game hero, why didn't you pick a tank?
Right.
So
you could have put Tass in the top lane, in the solo lane. He would have tied it at a minimum, especially if you went Scion Fusion. It wouldn't have been an optimal use of the draft.
Right.
But
so the way
it's like.
Oh, go ahead.
That's just they had like early game and then mid game and then
it died.
Not like they were trying to do 3 different things.
To me, it looks like when I look at that draft and after discussing it, to me it looks like they were too eager to try to exploit their task. Like they're like, oh my god, we got Tassadar. Like we have to use this Tassadar. Like I don't care, Illidan, yeah. Like and to me that's what it looks like because both the Lunara pick and the Illidan pick are like kind of poor man's Tassadar buddies, like and really I feel like they could have drafted normal heroes in those slots and just been like, yeah, we have Tassadar too. It's like a bonus, like, and I maybe would have worked better, but I don't know. I'm not them.
Who would you have drafted instead of Illidan? Like if you had
given the fact that they already have Lunara, they have to win team fights in the late game. And if you have to win a straight up 5v5 team fight, you need an actual tank.
Right.
So you would have picked up a tank instead of the Illidan and then put all of your damage hopes on Lunara with Zarya, who has the energy?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
that would have been my go-to plan.
Me personally,
based on the draft already happening the way it did.
I am never comfortable with a solo tank Zarya, even though she is really good on this map. Like, I would at least get a bruiser, something with a little CC and a little health pool going on. But no, they went for the Illidan, who evasion tank. Yeah, there you go. Like it's sort of there.
They could have picked up Tyrael and had Sank for the speed boost, or even we've seen some wonky judgment things occasionally in professional play.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been an option at least. They could have picked up Leoric for Entomb against Medic, and Drainhope does reasonably well against Varian, except for now he goes shield wall all the time. But Entomb would have also worked against Chromy to some degree, and they have the penalty box combo. They have Entomb into Expulsion Zone, which constantly knocks you back into the Entomb and does a lot of damage. So really a strong combination of abilities.
I was leaning towards the Leoric personally, yeah. For instead of the Illidan, I mean, they don't have.
They could have picked up the Joe and gone for like the super late game, because they wouldn't. Joe doesn't need cleanse.
Right.
We talked about that in the previous draft.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then they could have gotten Lunara where she needed to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they did not win this game. Challenge everything won.
They did not.
According to my little page here. Yeah. So I also have not seen this game. Did it basically just come down to how did the game go down essentially?
It was basically one-sided.
Okay.
Challenge everything like consistently got picks from people being a little bit out of position and Chromy hitting her skill shots, and the shields weren't timed well. And this is China, so there was always some wonky laning arrangements. China just has a really different take on how laning should be happening, and I think they actually may be ahead of the meta in some ways, but it's not refined enough to beat teams internationally. So they're working on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Could have went Shen and barreled the medic. That would have worked. Like that would have been a reasonable.
At least, yeah, I agree. I agree with that statement. At least it's something, At least it's not solo tank Zarya. So yeah, there's a nice example of how to, I guess, draft something that works really well on Braxis and then kind of not emphasize it correctly and kind of ruin those picks. So don't do this right here.
It feels like they really got shoehorned into the Lunara, and then that kind of fell apart.
I don't see why not pick a hammer. Like obviously they could get Chromy, and Chromy's good against hammer. To be fair.
They could have gotten Chromy.
They could have gotten Chromy
too.
They
could have gotten
taken
Chromy.
That's true.
They should have.
Like,
you're right.
I don't feel they're shoehorned into the Lunara at all. Like,
they could have taken. They could have taken Ming. They could have taken Kael'thas if they wanted to.
But they wanted to use those task shields. They really wanted an auto attacker, which there's hammer. I don't know.
Hammer would have been better.
And that's the thing. They wanted the auto attacker, but Lunara's not even an auto attacker. Most of her damage doesn't come from auto attacks. Yeah. So it doesn't make sense if that's what they wanted to just.
I don't know. Yeah,
I was frustrated watching the draft. X team is interestingly consistent. They're not consistent, but they are a really interesting team.
Sorry, our friend Baba got wrecked. Okay. Well, those were very interesting drafts. I liked talking about one map and the same strategy going two ways. That was interesting. Yeah. So thanks for bringing those on. What do I have to say? Oh, so next week, sometimes things don't pan out, but we have a pretty exciting show next week. We're going to have two industry experts, so to speak, analyzing drafts together. And they are not me and Ryan. They are much more exciting than that. The plan is to have Dreadnought and Dunk Train come on next week and do some drafts with us. And then we're going to have Caldor on, too, after that. So we have a couple good shows coming up. If you like the idea of the show, definitely tell people to come check us out. I feel, and I say this without ego, Ryan. I feel the concept of our show is very highbrow and very educational. We deserve more viewers. So tell your friends.
Danny, you should watch this show.
Yeah, thank you. And also, obviously, CavalierGuest has that prodigy brain going for the Heroes of the Storm. He knows how to break stuff down and explain it in ways you can understand and very intelligently. So be sure to give him a follow at CavalierGuest. And
check out the solo lane
yeah,
series.
And check out his content coming out for Gale Force and his solo lane stuff. Anything else, Cavalier?
I think my next drafting guide is going to be up on GFE.
Oh, I saw that too. Yeah, that was your first. That was your first.
So
my
my first one is up. It's all about early game heroes versus late game heroes versus a third category of heroes, which are called horseshoe heroes, which are actually really, really interesting.
Okay.
You guys can check that out at gfe.gg. The next one is going to be coming out this weekend. It's going to be about granularity, like how to assign heroes roles, things that they can do versus things they can't do, and the basic template that exists for competitive drafting. It's going to be a guide sort of all about that.
I definitely want to read that.
Yeah,
that's just a baseline guide for other things that are coming in the future, and they're also going to pick up. I'm sure everyone watching has read The Art of the Tank. They're actually going to pick it up and put it on the site, so it'll have a home.
Nice.
And they're also going to be publishing The Gift of Life, which is the same thing but for supports.
Oh, good. You've been talking about that a while.
It's done.
Oh, it is?
It's done.
Good.
They're making art for it, and as soon as they're happy with their art, it'll be up on gfe.gg.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
I will read that too.
Well, congratulations again on that pickup. That's really exciting. We look forward to seeing more of what comes out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. One more thing I want to announce for us, the 25th, which is the day HOTS 2.0 comes out. I got a boatload of skins, and I want to give them away. So we have, basically I'm going to get a veteran loot box, and you're going to get a skin every time I open one of those. And I have all kinds of hero skins. I even have loot box skins. So you'll get loot boxes from loot box codes, not skins. So I'll be giving away some loot boxes, giving away some skins, which is a thing. I didn't know it was a thing, but it's like, yeah, here's a loot box code. And I was like, cool. So I guess it makes sense that they would make those. So yeah, be sure to come. Oh yeah.
It's the only thing you can buy with money now, guaranteed.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Totally. So come by on the 25th. It'll be during the day. I figured I'd take the day off and do it during the day while everyone's at work so they can have something to look at and not work. Watch a guy open a bunch of boxes, so that should be fun. And win some skins, so we'll be doing that. And I think that's all I got for now. I'm going to play some Heroes of the Storm after this, if you guys want to stick around. Anything else, Ryan?
I think that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Cavalier, for coming on again. It was great. So
yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Cav.
Yeah, it was. And I thank you for having me again. It's always such a good time.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to hang it up now. Have a good one, man.
Good night.